Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I have said on this platform many times that Zimbabwe is a failed state. Now, 45 years after independence, 2,500 years after the ancient Greeks gave mankind the answer to good governance, democracy. The question one has to ask is if Zimbabweans learned anything in the last 45 years. Are we looking at from now on things will get better? Or are we still blundering from pillar to post? Are we doomed to remain a failed state? Benjamin, welcome to the program.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. I think the answer is quite obvious. We came from the 2023 election, and from that election we had reports from various observer missions, Sadc, UN, EU, and so forth. And basically all of them with the same voice condemned our process. After they had condemned the process, what have Zimbabweans done to try and put pressure that these anomalies be rectified? Nothing. So when you ask a question to say, are we doomed to repeat or keep going in the same cycle? The answer is obvious. Yes. Because nothing is being done to address the problem of flawed elections. As long as we do not go head on and fix that which needs to be fixed, we have accepted that we are just going to continue as is. That's it, period.
I have to agree with you. I don't think Zimbabweans out there have learned anything at all. You're absolutely right. One of the key things to achieving to end the failed state status is that we must hold free, fair, and credible elections and put an end to this case of rigged elections. And unfortunately, I think it would be fair to say that many people out there, many Zimbabweans out there, even now with the benefit of hindsight, they have no clue what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections. I mean, this is disappointing. It's not as if this is rocket science. We had the opportunity to implement the democratic reforms which would have stopped ZANU-PF of rigging the elections during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. We failed to implement even one reform. And you would think by now, most people would have finally learned what the GNU was about. But of course, they didn't. When you don't even know what the reforms are, how can you tell what the GNU should be about? It is not rocket science. I think this is what I find so disappointing in our failures. And we're still, as the notice I've got on the screen there argues, we still have some people here who are so focused on the individual leader or the party to the point where they've lost sight of what is it they really want. Good governance depends on quality leaders. And if you've got a leader who has failed, you've got to be able to say, you have failed, and let's get another leader. If you can't hold the leaders to account, how are you going to get quality leaders? I mean, this is what is so disappointing. And yet we've got people here who have put the leaders, the individuals, on pedestals where they become demigods. No one can hold them to account. It is disappointing. And this is why we keep going round and round in circles. Some of them do not even want to admit that the leaders have failed. Ben.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the moment you start questioning, leadership to say, why did you do ABC? Instead of the leaders, coming to explain, you are finding that it is, our fellow citizens that will come up in arms, to defend and insult, those that want answers. If you are comfortable with the status quo and being lied to, being manipulated, it is your own choice. But when some citizens come and ask for accountability, ask for answers, to say, you said this and that, or you promised this and that, how come you did not deliver on your promise? It is their right to get answers. They do not all of a sudden turn out to be Varakashi or puppets of the West just because they've asked questions. This is what is really, really sad, to find out that, in all our hardships, the struggle we are in together, it is now our fellow, Zimbabweans that are crushing, the voice of reason, the voice to, to discuss, to have dialogue. And at the end of the day, you find out that, our leaders have now realized that they can get away with absolutely anything. They are unaccountable to anybody anymore. And this is why we find we are in this mess and we cannot seem to borrow our way out.
Yes. When you come to ZANU-PF, there are some people there who still want to believe that we are on the right track to achieving economic prosperity. Here is a picture of Paranyatwa Hospital. It used to be a 5-star hospital in 1980. But as you can see from the ceiling there, it is in a deplorable state. If one of the country's referral hospital is in this sorry state, one can only imagine what the rural hospitals, what state the rural hospitals are in. ZANU-PF has managed to stay in power by rigging elections. And that point was accepted by many Zimbabweans as far back as the late 1990s. And they realized that if we are going to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections, we needed to implement democratic reforms. So there is no point in dwelling forever on what ZANU-PF has or is not done. ZANU-PF is not going to reform itself out of office. We need to reform the regime out of office. And we're only going to do it by appointing, electing opposition leaders who will implement the reforms. We cannot deny that MDC-CCC leaders have failed the nation in that task. And it's all because they are corrupt. So we keep coming back to this issue, free, fair, and credible elections. How are we going to achieve that? We need competent opposition leaders who will do it. MDC-CCC leaders have failed to implement even one token reform in 25 years. And hence the reason why ZANU-PF is able to consistently rig the elections. And they fail to do so because of corruption. Why some people will not accept that MDC-CCC leaders are no longer serving the ordinary people beggars belief. But the real challenge is we can deny it all we want, but we will not get out of this mess without implementing the reforms to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. Because ZANU-PF will never reform itself out of office. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
In closing, I would just want to say, it is sad how, politicians can get away with just about anything, like I said. They don't really, have to give us much. Even when they stand up and speak, they do not give us anything with substance. They just simply tell us what we want to hear. I'll give you an example. We had a guy called Nyokaya Mabunu, who still managed to con the very, very elite in Zimbabwe. The well-learned people were conned by this guy into believing that the military is going to do this and so forth. The movement is going to be big. And here we are. Yet people were ready to follow him. These are supposed to be the learned that are supposed, to be teaching those that do not know what democracy is, what the best way forward for Zimbabwe is. They should be explaining what Sadc meant by, the recommendations they suggested. These are the same people that get conned by somebody, I don't know what to say. It's really sad. it's unfortunate that, to conclude on the first question that you asked, is Zimbabwe ever going to be changed, or is Zimbabwe ready for change? I don't think so. Yes, we are suffering, but we're not ready for change. We have been told what to do, but we have refused. And that is as simple as that.
Well, I would like to conclude with playing a video clip of Tony Blair commenting about what happened in Malaysia, in Singapore, and why Singapore has been a success story. Sorry, yes, still having some problems here. Here we go.
Or have been even more successful than it ended up? Would it have been less successful? With Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore, I mean, it's the wrong way around. I mean, I learned so much from him. He took three decisions, really three important decisions, right at the beginning for Singapore. Each one of them now seems obvious, deeply contested. Number one, he said everyone's going to speak English. Now, there were lots of people who said to him at the time, no, we've been thrown out of. We're now a fledgling country, a city-state country. We need to have our own local language. We need to be true to our roots and everything. He said, no, English is the language of the world. Secondly, he said, we're going to get the best intellectual capital and management capital from wherever it exists in the world, and we're going to bring it to Singapore. And again, people said, no, we should stand on our own 2 feet. And you're also bringing in the British, who we just, we've got all these disputes with. And he said, no, I'm going to bring in the best from wherever they are, and they're going to come to Singapore. Today, Singapore exports intellectual capital. Right? And the third thing he did, and one of the ways we're going to do that, is we're going to make sure our political leaders are well paid, which the Singapore leaders are the best paid in the world by a factor of about 10. And there's going to be zero tolerance of corruption. Zero tolerance of corruption. And those are the three decisions that were instrumental in building Singapore today.
So in closing, we have got a wealth of information out there on how we should run our country, Zimbabwe, what we should do to be a successful country. Indeed, one of the Japanese intellectuals and scholar, Ken Yamamoto, visited Zimbabwe soon after independence. And one of the things he said was that Zimbabwe had the potential to become the Singapore or South Korea of Africa. And yet, 45 years down the line, we have become the North Korea of Africa, one of the most unstable and poor countries in the region because of bad governance. And the tragedy for Zimbabwe is we have not learned. I really honestly do not see any signs that people of Zimbabwe have learned something the last 45 years. And so I can honestly say we are doomed. We are doomed to remain a failed state until we learn. And so far, we have not learned. Tragic. Thank you very much, those of you who were able to join us this afternoon. And thank you very much, Ben. Have a good night.